know you're faking it. Well, you always seem to breathe harder whenever you're pretending to sleep. Yeah, yes, you do. Come on. Nothing, just some late night reading. We really wanted to do this again, right? Sorry, but there's no, nothing. I'm just reading another, I'm not sure you'd be into it. No, I finished Ghost of the Watchman a couple weeks ago, so finished with that one. But then I started reading another one, and that was relatively short, and this one looked interesting. It's called The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. Or Hinton? I think it's, yeah. S.E. Hinton. Yeah, that's it. And pretty much about, like, young gangsters, both from the rich and the poor, constantly going at each other. Something about the greasers and the socials. Just, like, basic, like, youth gang divide stuff. Oh, you think it fits me? Well, guess what? It fits you too now. Well, since you're up, there's only one thing left to do. Bore you until you go back to sleep. No, I'm kidding. But then again, like, just like 1 or 2 chapters in, boom, you're already out like a light. So, I guess I'll just... No, that's fine. I can go from the beginning. I was on, like, chapter 8, but, I can, like, give you the introduction, and then see if it's something that interests you, and then if so, I don't know, maybe we'll pick this back up. God knows you're gonna be like this tomorrow. Alright then. Chapter 1. Yeah, these pages really stick together. This is brand new. Okay, it was used, but it's new to me. Okay. Here we go. Get comfy. Okay. Let's see. When I stepped out into the bright sunlight from the darkness of the movie house, I had only 2 things on my mind. Paul Newman and a ride home. I was wishing I looked like Paul Newman. He looks tough and I didn't. And I guess my own looks aren't so bad. I have light brown, almost red hair and greenish gray eyes. Wish there were more gray, because I hate most guys who have green eyes. But I have to be content with what I have. My hair is longer than most boys who wear theirs. Squared off in the back, along at the front and sides. But I'm a greaser, and most of my neighborhood rarely bothers to get a haircut. Besides, I look better with long hair. Yeah, if you're back in the 50s. Not exactly sure when this was written, but sounds like this set takes place in the 50s, maybe 60s. May have to do some research on that. Anyway. Let's see. I had a long walk home with no company, but I usually loan it anyway. For no reason except that I like to watch movies undisturbed, so I can get into them and live with them and the actors. When I see a movie with someone, it's kind of uncomfortable. Like having someone read your book over your shoulder. Or in this case, my lap. No, I'm kidding. No, you're fine. Just keep listening. Hey, it's the book, not me. I'm different in that way. I mean, my second older brother, Soda. Huh. Guy's named after a beverage. Who knew? Who is 16 and going on 17. Never cracks a book at all. And my oldest brother, Daryl, who we just called Darry, works too long and too hard to be interested in a story, drawing a picture, so I'm not like them. And nobody in our gang digs movies and books the way I do. For a while there, I thought I was the only person in the world that did, so I loaned it. Soda tries to understand, at least, which is more than Darry does. But then, Soda is different from anybody. He understands everything. Almost. Like he never holders or hover... What's that? Holler. He's never hollering at me at the time. I'm sorry, the placement was weird. Like he's never hollering at me over the time the way Darry is. Or treating me as if I'm sticks. Sorry, I have sticks on my mind now. Ryan does this to me as if I was 6 instead of 14. I love Soda more than I've ever loved anyone, even Mom and Dad. He's always happy-go-lucky and grinning, while Darry's hard and firm and rarely grins at all. But then, Darry's gone through a lot in his 20 years. Grown up too fast. Soda Pop will never grow up at all. I don't know which way's best. I'll find out one of these days. Anyway, I went on walking home thinking about the movie, and then suddenly wishing I had some company. Greasers can't walk alone too much, or they'll get jumped. Or someone will come by and scream, "Greaser!" at them. Which doesn't make you feel too hot, if you know what I mean. And when we get jumped by the socials. I guess it's a short anagram for socials, but it's pronounced like SOCS. So it's like the socials, the greasers. I'm not sure how you spell it, but it's so abbreviation for the socials. And jet set on the west side rich kids. It's like the term greaser, which is used to class us all boys on the east side. We're poorer than the socials. And the middle class, I reckon. We're wilder too. Not like the socials, who jump greasers and wreck houses and throw beer blasts for kicks. And get editorials in the paper for being public disgrace one day, and then an asset to an asset to society the next. Greasers are almost like hoods. We steal things and drive up old souped-up cars and hold up gas stations, and we have a gang fight once in a while. I didn't mean to do the things like that. Darry would kill me if I got into trouble with the police. Since Mom and Dad were killed in an auto wreck, the 3 of us, we all got to stay together as long as we have. So Soda and I stayed out of trouble as much as we can. And we're careful not to get caught when we can't. I only mean the most greasers do things is just like we wear out long hair and dresses and blue jeans and t-shirts, or leave our shirt tails out and wear leather jackets and tennis shoes or boots. I'm not saying that either. Socials organizers are better. It's just that that's the way the things are. I could have waited to go to the movies until Darry or Soda Pop got off work. They would have gone with me, or driven me there, or walked along. Although Soda can't just sit there long enough to enjoy a movie, or they would just bore Barry to death. Darry. Sorry, I said Barry. They bore Darry to death. Darry thinks his life is enough without inspecting other people's. Or I could have gotten one of the gang to come along. One of the 4 boys Darry and Soda have grown up with along. And we all consider them family. We're almost as close as brothers when you grow up in a tight-knit neighborhood like ours. You get to know each other very well. If I had to think about it, I could have called Darry and he would have come by on his own, and he would have picked me up. Or 2-Bit Matthews, one of our gang, would have come to get me or lend me his car if I had just asked him. But sometimes I just don't use my head. It drives my brother Darry nuts when I do stuff like that. Because I'm supposed to be smart. I make good grades, I have a high IQ and everything, but I don't always use my head. Besides, I like walking. I was about to decide I didn't like it so much, though, when I spotted that red-hair Corvair. Must have been in a car or something, trailing me. I was almost 2 blocks from home then, so I started walking a little faster. I had never been jumped, but I had seen Johnny come after 4 socials got a hold of him, and it wasn't pretty. Johnny was scared of his own shadow after that. Johnny was 16 then. I knew it wasn't enough, though. The fast walking, I mean. Even before the Corvor pulled up beside me, and 5 socials got out, I got pretty scared. I'm kinda small for 14, even though I have a good build. And those guys were bigger than me. I automatically hitched my thumbs in my jeans and slouched, wondering if I can get away if I made a break for it. I remember Johnny, his face all cut up and bruised, and I remember how he cried when we found him, half conscious and half in the corner lot. Johnny had an awful rough at home. Looks like it made him cry. It took a lot to make that guy cry. I was sweating something fierce, although I was cold. I could feel my palms getting clammy and the perspiration running down my back. I get like that when I'm real scared. I glanced around for a pop bottle or a stick or something. Steve Randall, Soda's best buddy, had once held off 4 guys with just a pop bottle. There was nothing. So I stood there like a bump on a log while they surrounded me. I didn't use my head. They walked around me slowly, silently smiling. "Hey, Grease," one of them said over a friendly voice. "We're gonna do you a favor, Greaser. We're gonna cut all that long, greasy hair off." He had on a Mad Race shirt. Mad Race? Mad Race shirt. I could still see it. Blue Mad Rays. One of them laughed. They cussed me out in a low voice. I couldn't think of anything to say. There just isn't a whole lot you can say when you're getting ready to get mugged. So I kept my mouth shut. "Need a haircut, Greaser?" The medium-sized blonde pulled a knife out of his back pocket and flipped the blade open. I finally thought of something to say. No. I was backing up away from that knife. Of course I backed right into one of them. They had me down in a second. They had my arms and legs pinned down, and one of them was sitting on my chest on his knees and my elbows. And if you didn't think that hurts, you're crazy. I could smell English leather, shaving lotion, stale tobacco. And I wondered foolishly if I would suffocate before they did anything. I was scared so bad I was wishing I would. I fought to get loose. I almost did for a sec. But then they tightened up. Tightened up on me, and then one of them on my chest slugged me a couple of times. So I laid still, swearing at them between gasps. A blade was held against my throat. How'd you like that haircut to begin with the chin below the chin? It occurred to me that they could kill me. I went wild, started screaming for Soda, Darry, anyone. Someone put his hand over his mouth. Someone put his hand over my mouth. And I bit on it as hard as I could, tasting the blood running through my teeth. I heard a muttering curse and got slugged again. And Then they were stuffing a handkerchief in my mouth. One of them kept saying, shut up, for Pete's sake, shut up. Poor kid. Then there were shouts and pounding of feet. The socials jumped up and they left me lying there, gasping where I laid there and wondered what in the world was happening. People were jumping around me, running by me, and I was too dazed to figure it out. When someone had me under the armpits and was hauling me to my feet, it was Darry. Are you alright, Ponyboy? He was shaking me, and I wish he'd stop. I was dizzy enough anyway. I could tell it was Darry, though. Partly because of the voice, and partly because Darry was always rough with me without meaning to be. I'm okay. Stop shaking me, Darry. I'm okay. He stopped instantly. I'm sorry. He wasn't really. Darry isn't ever sorry for anything he does. It seems funny to me that he should looked 25, and a lot of people thought Darry and Dad were brothers instead of father and son. But they only looked alike. My father was never rough with anyone without meaning to be. Darry is about 6'2" and broad-shouldered and muscular. He has dark brown hair that kicks out in front and a slight cowlick in the back, just like Dad's. But Darry's eyes are his own. He's got eyes that are like 2 pieces of pale blue-green ice. They got a determined set of them, just like the rest of them. He looks older than 20. Tough, cool, and smart. He could be real handsome if his eyes weren't so cold. He doesn't understand anything that is not plain hard fact, but he uses his head. I sat down again, rubbing my cheek where I'd been slugged the most. Darry jammed his fists in his pockets. They didn't hurt you too bad, did they? They did. I was smart. And an aching and my chest was sore. And I was so nervous my hands were shaking, and I wanted to start bawling. But you don't just say that to Darry. So I just said, I'm okay. Soda Pop came looping back. By then I had figured that all the noise I heard was the gang coming to rescue me. He dropped down beside me, examining my head. You got cut up, little Ponyboy? Huh, so the dude's name's Ponyboy. Probably has like a ponytail or something. Huh. Let's see. I only looked at him blankly. Did I? He pulled out a handkerchief, wet the end of it with his tongue, and pressed it gently against the side of my head. You're bleeding like a stuck pig. Am I? Look. He showed me the handkerchief, reddened as if by magic. Did they pull a blade on you? I remembered the voice. Need a haircut, greaser? The blade must have slipped while he was trying to shut me up. Yeah. Soda is handsomer than anyone else I know. Not like Darry. Soda's movie star kind of handsome. That kind of people that people stop on the streets to go and watch by, but he's not as tall as Darry, but he's a little slimmer. But he has a finely drawn, sensitive face and somehow manages to be reckless and throughout all at the same time. He's got dark gold hair and he combs it back, long and silky and straight. And in the summer sun, bleaches it to a shining wheat gold. His eyes are dark brown, lively, dancing, recklessly laughing eyes that can be gentle and sympathetic one moment and blazing with anger the next. He has Dad's eyes. But Soda is one of a kind. He can get drunk in a drag race or dancing without ever going anywhere near alcohol. Our neighborhood, it's rare to find a kid who doesn't drink once in a while. But Soda never touched a drop. Doesn't need to. Yeah, I know some people like that. Some people who can just go from 0 to boom. Just rage, drunk on rage, but never have even tried a sip of alcohol. And no, Tashi doesn't. He gets drunk on just plain living, and he understands everybody. He looks at me more closely. I looked away hurriedly, because if you want to know the truth, I was starting to bawl. I knew I was white as I fell, and I was shaking like a leaf. Soda put his hands on my shoulder. Easy, Ponyboy. They ain't gonna hurt you no more. I said, I know, I said. But the ground began to blur, and I felt hot tears running down my cheeks. I brushed them away immediately. I'm just a little spooked, that's all. I drew a quivering breath and I quit crying. You just don't cry in front of Darry. Not unless you're hurt like Johnny had been that day we found him in the vacant lot. Compared to Johnny, I wasn't hurt at all. Soda rubbed my hair. You're an okay kid, Pony. I had to grin at him. Soda can make you grin no matter what. I guess it's because he's always grinning so much himself. You're crazy, Soda. Out of your mind. Darry looks as if he's like to knock our heads together. You're both nuts. Soda merely cocked one eyebrow. A trick he had picked up on 2-bit. Seems to run in his family. Darry stared at him for a second, then cracked a grin. Soda Pop isn't afraid of him like everyone else, and everyone enjoys teasing him. I just as soon tease a full-grown grizzly. But for some reason, Darry seems to like being teased by Soda. Our gang had chased the socials to their car and heaved rocks at them. Yeah, if it worked in it, it'll work in this. They came running towards us now. 4 lean, hard guys. They were all as tough as nails and looked it. I'd grown up with them, and they accepted me. Even though I was younger, because I was Darry and Soda's little kid brother, and kept my mouth shut good. Steve Randall was 17, tall and lean. With thick, greasy hair he kept combed in complacent swirls. He was tacky, smart, and Soda's best buddy since grade school. Steve's specialty was cars. He could lift a hubcap more quietly than anyone else in the neighborhood. But he also knew cars upside down and backwards. He could drive anything on wheels. He and Soda worked at the same gas station. Steve part-time and Soda full-time. The situation got more customers than anyone in town. Whether that was because Steve was so good with cars or because Soda attracted girls like honey draws flies. Must be the charmer. Like to see them work a car wash. Probably. Then again, that's probably what they did back then. Before there was actually a thing. I couldn't tell you. I liked Steve only because he was Soda's best friend. He didn't like me. He thought I was a tag-along as a kid. Soda always looked at me with them, and when he went places, if they weren't taking girls that bugged Steve, it wasn't my fault. Steve always asked me. I didn't ask him. Soda didn't think I'm a kid. Two-Bit Matthews was the oldest in the gang, and the wisecracker of the bunch. He was about 6 feet tall, stocky in build, and very proud of his long, rusted-colored sideburns. He had gray eyes with a wide grin, and he couldn't stop making funny remarks to save his life. You couldn't shut up that guy. He always had his 2 bits worth in him, hence his name. Even his teachers forgot his real name was Keith, and was hardly remembered as he had one. And he often remembered that he even had one. Life was one big joke to 2-Bit. It was famous for shoplifting and his backhandle switchblade, which he couldn't have acquired without his first talent. Let's see. He was always smarting off to the cops. He really couldn't help it. Everything he said was so irresistibly funny that he had to just let the police in on it to brighten their dull lives. That's the way he explained it to me. He likes fights, blondes, and for some unfathomable reason, school. So, I think this book's trying to tell me something. Well, I mean, I don't mind blondes. It's not like a preference or anything, but, yeah, the fights and unfathomable reason for liking school, yeah, that's pretty much me pinned. Yeah, you can definitely see why I started to gravitate toward this book. I liked him for real, well, because he kept us laughing at ourselves as well as the other things. It reminded me of Will Rogers. Maybe it was the grin. If I had to pick the real character of the gang, it would be Dallas Winston. Dally. I used to like to draw his picture when he was in a dangerous mood. But when I could get his personality down in a few lines. He had an elvish face, with high cheekbones and a pointed chin, small and sharp animal teeth, and ears like a lynx. Sounds like Tashi. Don't tell him that. Or do. I don't really care. Let's see. His hair was almost as white as it was so blonde. And he didn't like haircuts. Or hair oil either. So it fell over his forehead in whips and kicks out to the back in tuffles, and curls throughout the behind his ears and along the nape of his neck. His eyes were blue, blazing ice cold with hatred for the whole world. Dally had spent 3 years in the west side of New York and had been arrested at the age of 10. He was tougher than the rest of us. Tougher, colder, meaner. The shade of difference that separated a greaser from a hood wasn't present in Dally. He was as wild as the boys in the downtown outlifts. Like Tim Shepard's gang. In New York, Dally blew off steam in gang fights, but here, organized games are rarities. There's just small bunches of friends who stick together, and the warfare is between the social classes, a rumble when it's called. It's usually born from a grudge fight, and the opponents just happen to bring their friends along. Oh, these are a few named gangs around, like the River Kings and the Timber Street Tigers. Here are some Southwest, there's no real gang rivalry. So Dally, even though he can get into a good fight sometimes, and no real specific thing to hate. No rival gang, only socials. You can't win against them no matter how hard you try, because they got all the breaks. And even whipping them isn't going to change the fact. Maybe that was why Dallas was so bitter. He had quite the reputation. They had a file on him down at the police station. He had been arrested. He got drunk on a road in Rhodos, lied, cheated, stole, rolled drinks, jumped small kids. He did everything. I didn't like him, but he was smart and you had to respect him. Johnny Cade was the last and least. If you could picture a little dark puppy that had been kicked too many times and had lost in the crowd of strangers, you'll have Johnny. He was the youngest next to me, smaller than the rest. With a slight build, he had big black eyes and dark tan face. His hair was jet black and heavily greased and combed to the side. But it was so long that it fell in shaggy bangs across his forehead. He had a nervous, suspicious look in his eyes, and that beating got him from... The Soch didn't help the matter. He was the gang's pet, everyone's kid brother. His father was always beating on him, and his mother ignored him, except when she was hacked off at something. And then you can hear her yelling at him, clear down our house. I think he hated that worse than getting whipped. He could have run away 1,000,000 times if we hadn't been there. If it hadn't been for the gang, Johnny would never have known what love and affection are. Yikes. You doing okay? Okay, you're still up. Gotcha. Let's see here. I wiped my eyes hurriedly. Did you catch him? Nope. They got away this time. The dirty two-pit went on it cheerfully, calling the socials every name he could think of or make up. The kid's okay? I'm okay. Try to think of something to say. I'm usually pretty quiet around people, even the gang. I changed the subject. I didn't know where you were out the cooler yet, Dally. Good behavior. Got off early. Dallas lit a cigarette and handed it to Johnny. Everyone sat down to have a smoke and relax. The smoke always lessened the tension. Well, I can't say I detest that. I had quit trembling and my color was back. Cigarettes were calming me down. 2-Bit cocked an eyebrow. Nice looking bruise you got there, kid. I touched my cheek gingerly. That's a weird word. Gingerly. Really? 2-Bit nodded sagely. Nice cut, too. Makes you look tough. Tough and tough are two different words. Tough is the same as rough. Tough means cool, sharp. Like a tough-looking Mustang or a tough record. In our neighborhood, both are compliments. Steve flicked his ashes at me. What are you doing, walking by your lonesome? Leave it to good old Steve to bring up something like that. I was coming home from the movies. I didn't think. You don't ever think. Darry broke in. Not at home or anywhere where it counts. You must think at school. With all those good grades you bring home. You always got your nose in books, but you never use your head for common sense. No, sir, bub. If you have to go in by yourself, you should have carried a blade. I just stared the whole time at my toes and my tennis shoes. Me and Darry didn't dig each other. I never could please him. He would always holler at me for carrying a blade if I had to carry one. If I brought home B's, he wanted A's. And if I got A's, he wanted to make sure that they stayed A's. If I played football, I should be studying. And if I was reading, I should be playing football. He never hollered at Soda Pop. Not even when Soda Pop dropped out of school or got tickets for speeding. He just hollered at me. Soda was glaring at him. Leave my kid brother alone, you hear? It ain't his fault he likes to go to the movies. And it ain't his fault the socials like to jump us. And if he had been carrying a blade, it would have been a good excuse for him to cut ribbons. Soda always liked to take ups for me. Darry said impatiently, when I want my kid brother to tell me what to do with my other kid brother, I'll ask you, kid brother. But he laid off me. He always does when Soda Pop tells him to. Most of the time. Next time he gets one of us to go with you, Ponyboy, 2-Bit said. Any of us will. Speaking of movies, Dally yawned, flicked away his cigarette butt. I'm walking over to the nightly double tomorrow night. Anyone want to come to hunt some action? Steve shook his head. Me and Soda are picking up Evie and Sandy. I think it's Evie and Sandy for a game. He didn't notice the look on the way he did right then. I was going to ask if I could come. I never tell Soda because he really likes Steve a lot. But sometimes I can't stand Steve Randall. I mean, sometimes I hate him. Darry sighed. Just like that, he knew he would. Darry never had time to do anything anymore. I'm working tomorrow night. Dally looked at the rest of us. How about y'all? 2-Bit, Johnny Cake, you and Pony want to come? Me and Johnny'll come, I said. I knew Johnny wouldn't open his mouth unless he was forced to. Okay, Darry? Yeah, since I ain't got school night. Darry was real good about letting me go places on the weekend. On school nights, I could rarely leave the house. I was planning on getting boozed up tomorrow night, 2-Bit said. If I don't, I'll walk over and find y'all. Steve was looking at Dally's hand, his ring, which he had rolled a drunk senior to get. was back on his finger. You break up with Sylvia again? I thought of Sylvia and Evie and Sandy and 2-Bit's many blondes. They were the only kind of girls that would look at us, I thought. Tough, loud girls who wore too much eye makeup and giggled and swore too much. Kinda like Soda's girls. Sandy just fine, though her hair was natural blonde and her laugh was soft. Much like her china blue eyes. She didn't have a real good home or anything, and was kind of our kind. Greaser. But she was a real nice girl. Still, lots of times I wondered what other girls were like. The girls who were bright-eyed with their dresses a decent length and acted as if they would like to spit on us given the chance. Some of them were afraid of us. I remember Dallas Winston. I didn't blame them, but most of us looked like we were most of them looked at us like we were dirt. Gave us the same kind of look that the socials did when they came by in their Mustangs and Carvors and yelled "Grease" at us. And wondered about them. The girls, I mean. Did they cry when their boys were arrested? Like Evie and when Sandy, or I don't know why I said that. Like Evie did when Stevie got hauled in? Or do they run out to them by the way Sylvia did? Dallas? But maybe their boys didn't get arrested or beaten up or bruised in the rodeos. I was still thinking about it while I was doing my homework that night. I had to read Great Expectations for English. And that kid, Pip, he reminded me of us. The way he felt mocked, noisy became. He wasn't a gentleman or anything. And the way that girl kept looking down on him. That happened to me once. One time in biology, I had to dissect a worm, and the razor wouldn't cut it. So I used my switchblade. The minute I flicked it out, I forgot what I was doing, or I would never would have done. This girl right beside me kind of gasped and said, "They are right, you're a hood." That didn't make me feel so hot. There were a lot of socials in the class. I got put into A classes because I'm supposed to be smart. And most of them thought I was pretty funny. I didn't though. She was a cute girl. She looked real good in yellow. We deserve a lot for our trouble, I thought. Dallas deserves everything he gets, and should get worse. If you want the truth, and 2-Bit, he doesn't really want or need half the things he swipes from stores. He just thinks it's fun to swipe everything that isn't nailed down. I can understand why Soda Pop and Steve get into drag races and fight so much, though both of them have too much energy, too much feeling, with no way to blow it off. "Rub harder, Soda," and I heard Darry mumbling. "You're gonna put me to sleep." I looked through the door. Soda Pop was giving Darry a back rub. Darry was always pulling muscles. He roofs houses, and he's always trying to carry two bundles of roofing up the ladder. I knew Soda would put him to sleep, because Soda can put about anyone out when he sets his head to it. He thought Darry worked too hard anyway. I did too. Darry didn't deserve to work like an old man. He was only in his 20s. He had been a real popular guy in school. He was the captain of the football team, and he was voted Boy of the Year. But we just didn't have the money for him to go to college. Even with the authentic scholarship he won. And now he didn't even have time between jobs to even think about college. So he never went anywhere and never did anything anymore. Except work out at the gyms and go skiing. Go skiing with some of our friends, and sometimes I rubbed my cheek where it had turned purple. I had to look in the mirror, and it didn't look tough. And it didn't make me look tough. But Darry had put a band-aid on the cut. I remember how awful Johnny had looked when he got beaten up. I had just as much right to use the streets as the socials did, and Johnny had never hurt them. Why did the socials hate us so much? We left them alone. I nearly went to sleep over my homework trying to figure it out. Soda Papa had jumped into bed at this time, yelled sleepingly for me to turn off the light and get to bed. When I finished the chapter I was on, I did. Lying beside Soda, staring at the wall, I kept remembering the faces of the socials that surrounded me. That blue mandarin shirt the blonde was wearing, and I couldn't still hear that thick voice. Need a haircut, greaser? I shivered. You cold, Ponyboy? A little, I lied. Soda threw one of his arms around my neck, across my neck. He mumbled something drowsingly. Listen, kiddo. When Darry hollers at you, he didn't mean nothing. He's just one more worries that someone his age ought to do. Don't take him too seriously. You dig, Pony? Don't let him bug you. He's really proud of you because you're so brainy. It's just because you're the baby. I mean, he loves you a lot, savvy? Sure, I said, trying for Soda's sake to keep the sarcasm out of my voice. Soda? Yeah. How come you dropped out? I never have gotten over that. I could hardly stand it when he left school. Because I'm dumb. The only things I was passing anyway were auto mechanics and gym. You're not dumb. Yeah, I am. Shut up and I'll tell you something. Don't tell Darry, though. Okay? I think I'm gonna marry Sandy. After she gets out of school and I get a better job and everything. I might wait till you two get out of school, though. So I can still help Darry with the bills and stuff. Tough enough. Wait until I get out, though, so you can keep Darry off my back. Don't be like that kid. I told you he didn't mean half of what he says. You in love with Sandy? What's it like? He sighed happily. It's real nice. Gotta get that real nice. In a moment his breath was like light and regular. I turned my head to look down on him. In the moonlight he looked like some Greek god come to earth. I wondered how he could stand being so handsome. Then I sighed. I didn't quite get what he meant by, or what he meant about Darry. Darry thought I was another mouth to feed and somebody to holler at. Darry loves me? I thought of those hard, pale eyes. Soda was wrong for once, I thought. Darry doesn't love anyone or anything, except maybe Soda. I didn't hardly think of him as being human. I don't care, I lied to myself. I don't care about him either. Soda's enough. And I'd have him until I go out of school. I don't care about Darry. But I was still lying and I knew it. I lied to myself all the time. But I never believed me. And you're out like a light. Well, at least we got through chapter 1. Well, it's definitely a good introduction. I don't know, maybe we'll pick it up later.